The courtroom was quiet when the judge spoke.
The court will now hear the defendant's statement.
Not the heavy kind of quiet, the careful kind, the kind people hold when something permanent is about to happen. Silas Reed stood straight, hands still at his sides. No suit chosen to impress, no speech prepared to persuade. The judge looked down at the file, then up at him. "Mr. Reed," she said, calm and clear, "do you understand the responsibility you are asking to take on today?" Silas did not answer right away. He turned his head slightly. Theo sat beside him, feet barely touching the floor. Small hands folded the way Silas had taught him, eyes lifted, waiting. Silas already knew the answer before the question finished. This was not a favor. This was not a rescue. This was not paperwork. This was a lifetime. If you believe stories about responsibility still matter, take a moment to subscribe now. These are the stories where staying changes everything. The judge waited. So did the room. And in that silence, the truth hovered, ready to change how this story would be understood. The judge waited for Silas to speak, but the story had already moved past the question, because the child sitting beside him was not new to his life. He was not taking responsibility for someone else's loss. He was not stepping into a role out of sympathy. Theo was his, by blood, by truth, by a fact Silas had lived 3 years without knowing. The courtroom did not know this yet. The judge did not know. The clerk did not know. Only Silas did. And the weight of it settled in his chest without warning. 3 years. 3 birthdays he never saw. 3 years of first words, scraped knees, night fears. 3 years where his child learned how to live without him. Not because he walked away. Not because he refused responsibility. Because silence stood where honesty should have been. How does a man miss his own child for 3 years? That question hangs here for a reason. Because the answer is not carelessness. And it is not cruelty. The truth is quieter. And harder. Pause here for a moment. Because this story is not rare. It is uncomfortable because it feels close. Have you ever lost someone without knowing you were losing them? Have you ever believed a chapter ended cleanly, only to learn later it kept going without you? Silas Reed believed his life followed order. When something ended, it ended. When someone left, they left. That belief kept him steady. It also kept him blind. While he fixed broken things for others, a truth lived elsewhere. Quiet, untouched, growing without his name. Theo did not disappear. He lived. He laughed. He learned the world without knowing the man who shared his eyes. And Silas lived his days believing he had done nothing wrong. This is where many people recognize themselves. Not in the mistake. In the absence of one. No warning, no confrontation, no moment that demanded action. Just time moving forward, carrying consequences with it. Stay with this story, because what follows is not about blame. It is about what happens when truth finally reaches the right hands. Silence carries many meanings. People often mistake it for indifference, for escape, for a lack of care. This silence was none of those. No argument pushed Nyla away. No rejection closed the door. No choice was made to erase Silas from Theo's life. Fear made the decision. Fear of disruption. Fear of changing a man's future without permission. Fear of becoming a burden instead of a partner. So silence stepped in and pretended to be protection. While Silas believed life had moved forward, another life began. Not hidden out of malice. Hidden out of uncertainty. This matters. Because this story does not ask you to choose sides. It asks you to understand cost. Cost of waiting too long. Cost of assuming quiet means closure. Cost of believing love survives without truth. Silence can feel gentle at first. It avoids conflict. It delays pain. But time does not pause for it. And when truth finally arrives, it does not knock softly. It lands all at once. That moment is where this story truly begins. Before this story moves backward, pause here. Because what defines Silas Reed is not shock. It is what followed. When truth reached him, he did not argue it. He did not ask for time. He did not step away. He stayed. Not through words, through action. The kind that rearranges a life without announcement. the kind that chooses responsibility even when it arrives late. If stories about fatherhood, responsibility, and second chances matter to you, subscribe now. These stories are not loud. They are necessary. This story will not unfold through speeches. It will unfold through mornings, schedules, patience, and presence. Through a man learning how to be there for a child who never learned his name. The lesson begins here. Love does not prove itself by speaking first. It proves itself by remaining. Silas Reed did not adopt a stranger. He stepped into a role he had already been living, without knowing it. And everything that follows flows from that choice. Silas Reed lived by rhythm, not the kind written on planners or pinned to walls, the kind his body followed without thought. He woke before sunrise every day, even when no one required it. The house stayed quiet while he moved through it, careful not to rush, careful not to waste motion. Coffee brewed the same way each morning. Work boots placed side by side near the door. Keys checked before leaving. Lights turned off behind him. His days unfolded with the same intention. He believed small actions repeated over time built something solid, not progress measured in leaps, but in consistency. He trusted effort that did not need witnesses. At work, Silas arrived early and left only when the last task was finished. He fixed what others walked past. Loose fixtures, cracked panels, things unnoticed until they failed. People rarely thanked him. That never bothered him. Silas did not look for approval. He looked for order. To him, responsibility was not a title or a promise. It was showing up the same way, every day, even when no one was watching. This rhythm shaped his life. It made him reliable. It also made him believe that if something ended quietly, it ended completely. That belief would matter later. Silas Reed did not trust grand displays. He had seen how quickly promises spoken in heat cooled with time. Words felt easy to say, too easy. What mattered to him was what remained after the talking stopped. He showed care through action, through being available, through fixing what needed fixing without announcing it. If someone mentioned a problem once, Silas remembered. If something broke, he repaired it before it became a complaint. If a task needed doing, he did it fully, then moved on. This belief shaped every relationship in his life. He did not ask for attention. He did not demand reassurance. He assumed consistency spoke louder than explanation. When people expected emotional declarations, Silas offered presence instead. He stayed late. He followed through. He kept routines steady so others could rely on them. Some mistook this for distance. Silas saw it as respect. To him, love did not interrupt life. It supported it. It worked quietly in the background, holding things together while the world moved forward. This approach kept chaos away. It also meant Silas believed that when someone stopped showing up, the message was clear. No words needed. That assumption would later be tested in ways he never prepared for. Silas Reed gravitated toward what people missed. At job sites, he noticed the small faults first. A hinge pulling loose. A wire left exposed behind a panel. A leak starting slow beneath a sink. He understood how neglect worked. Small problems stayed quiet until they demanded attention. So he addressed them early, not for praise, not for recognition, because leaving things unfinished bothered him. He repaired storm damage at schools, community centers, old buildings with stories worn into their walls. Places that mattered to people who did not have the means to fix them fast. Silas never rushed those jobs. He believed a repair done halfway only delayed failure. He measured twice, checked stability, tested everything before moving on. People trusted his work because it held. This habit shaped how he saw the world. If something failed, Silas assumed someone stopped caring. If something disappeared, he believed it chose to leave. He did not imagine truths left unattended. He did not consider that some things break quietly while still wanting to remain. His hands knew how to restore structure. His heart trusted order too much to expect uncertainty. That trust made him dependable. It also left him unprepared for a truth that had been waiting, unseen for years. Silas Reed did not seek intensity. He avoided situations that demanded constant reaction. Raised voices unsettled him. Sudden changes felt unnecessary. He believed life worked best when it moved steadily. When conflict arose, Silas responded by grounding himself further. He listened more than he spoke. He acted instead of reacting. This made him dependable in moments others avoided. People turned to him when something needed to be handled calmly, not fixed quickly, handled properly. Silas carried responsibility without complaint. He paid bills on time, kept commitments even when inconvenient, finished what he started. Drama felt wasteful to him. It burned energy without building anything lasting. This did not make him cold. It made him careful. He valued peace because he worked hard to maintain it. He believed stability was a gift people rarely noticed until it vanished. That belief shaped every choice he made. Silas did not imagine life would test him through chaos. He assumed it would challenge him through endurance. And when the test finally arrived, it would not arrive loudly. It would arrive quietly, through truth delayed, through responsibility waiting to be claimed. The man built for structure would soon be asked to hold something far more fragile than routine. The Literacy Center sat on the east side of Ridgeway City, housed in a building most people passed without looking twice. Paint peeled near the windows. Shelves leaned slightly from years of use. Chairs never matched. Inside, though, the place carried purpose. Children arrived every afternoon with worn backpacks and guarded expressions. Adults came after work, tired but determined, tracing letters like second chances across paper. Nyla Brooks worked there because she believed learning deserved patience, not pressure, not spectacle. When storm damage cut power to half the building, Silas Reed was assigned to the repairs. He noticed the structure before the people. She noticed the people before the structure. Their first exchange was practical. She showed him what stopped the classes from running. He listened without interrupting. Silas worked quietly. Nyla watched from a distance, not out of interest in him, but in how carefully he handled the space. He treated the center like it mattered, like it deserved time. That mattered to her. They did not flirt. They did not exchange stories. They shared an understanding without naming it. This place held fragile progress, and both of them respected that. It was the first foundation, not romance. Alignment. The coffee started without discussion. The second morning, Silas returned to the Literacy Center. A paper cup sat on the edge of the work table. Plain, black, still warm. Nyla did not announce it. She did not wait for thanks. She placed it there the same way she placed books back on shelves, as part of the day. From then on, the routine settled naturally. Some mornings the cup arrived early. Other mornings it came later, when Silas paused to stretch his hands or check his notes. No explanations followed. They spoke in short exchanges. Questions about the repairs, updates about class schedules, nothing personal. Yet something familiar grew inside that repetition. Silas came to expect the coffee without depending on it. Nyla learned the timing of his breaks without asking. Neither of them labeled what was happening. They did not test it. They let it exist. The mornings felt steady, predictable in a way that calmed both of them. This was how connection began for them, not through intention, through consistency. Each cup carried the same message. I see you. I notice the effort. I respect your presence. Nothing more needed to be said. Silence followed them easily. When classes ended and the center emptied, Silas stayed to finish his work. Nyla remained nearby, organizing materials, reviewing notes, closing out the day. They did not fill the space with conversation. Some evenings, Silas worked while Nyla sat at a desk a few feet away, reading or planning the next week's lessons. The room held small sounds. Tools set down carefully. Pages turning. A chair shifting. The quiet never felt awkward. Neither of them searched for something to say. Neither felt pressure to perform. This was rare. Most people hurried to explain themselves when silence appeared. Silas and Nyla accepted it. In that calm, trust formed without negotiation. Silas noticed how Nyla stayed until everything was finished, even when no one asked her to. Nyla noticed how Silas double-checked his work, even after long hours. They learned each other through observation, through habits, through what remained consistent when no one watched. This kind of silence did not create distance. It closed it. It allowed them to be present without demand. And in that presence, something solid began to take shape. Trust did not arrive suddenly. It built itself in small ways over time without announcement. Silas learned Nyla's schedule before she ever told him. He knew when she preferred the building quiet. He noticed how she reacted when repairs interrupted lessons. Nyla learned Silas's limits the same way. When he needed focus. When he worked best alone. When he stayed longer than required because something still felt unfinished. They adjusted for each other without discussion. If a class ran late, Silas shifted his work. If repairs took longer, Nyla changed her plans. There was no keeping score. Neither tried to move faster than the other. Neither asked for explanations that had not been offered. This was how trust stayed intact. No expectations placed too early. No assumptions made too soon. They allowed room for each other to remain unchanged. Silas did not feel watched. Nyla did not feel evaluated. Their connection did not demand progress. It allowed patience. Over time, this created safety, not excitement, not intensity. Safety built on respect. That safety would later make the loss harder, because it was never broken by conflict. It was simply left behind. What Silas and Nyla shared never needed definition. They did not mark milestones. They did not announce intentions. They did not trade assurances meant to secure the future. They showed up. When Silas finished the repairs, he continued stopping by the center. Sometimes to adjust something small, sometimes with no task at all. Nyla welcomed him without questioning why. They walked together after closing hours, never far, never planned. Some evenings they talked about the day. Other evenings passed without words. Neither pushed the moment forward. There was no attempt to guide the connection. No effort to control its direction. They trusted what existed. That trust made the bond strong without tension. Their love worked because it did not compete with growth. It did not demand exclusivity from ambition. It allowed movement. This was the contrast that mattered. No one tried to hold the other in place. They believed presence was enough. That belief gave their time meaning. It also made the ending quieter than most love stories. No arguments, no dramatic separation, just distance growing where routine once lived, and silence filling the space consistency used to occupy. The offer arrived without drama. An email, clear terms, better funding, a wider reach. For Nyla, it represented years of quiet work finally being seen. The position would allow her to build programs instead of stretching limited resources. More classrooms, more adults learning to read, more children supported before frustration hardened into resignation. The location, though, changed everything. Another state, new systems, new responsibility. She read the message more than once, weighing its meaning. This was not ambition chasing status. This was purpose gaining support. When she told Silas, she expected hesitation. She did not receive it. He listened the way he always did. Without interruption, without offering solutions she did not ask for. Silas understood growth. He respected effort that expanded beyond comfort. He did not treat the offer as a threat. He treated it as validation. You should take it, he said, steady and certain. There was no bargaining, no attempt to delay the decision. Silas believed care meant standing behind progress, even when it changed proximity. That response mattered to Nyla. It confirmed what she trusted about him. Support without control, presence without possession. Neither of them realized that this moment would quietly set distance in motion. Silas did not measure love by closeness. He measured it by freedom. When Nyla spoke about the move, he did not frame the future as a test. He did not ask how often she would return. He did not ask what would happen to them. He focused on what the opportunity meant to her. Silas believed holding someone back only created resentment later. He had seen how people shrank when their growth required permission. So he chose support without conditions. He helped her plan the transition, reviewed timelines, offered to assist with logistics if needed. There was no tension in his voice, no hint of fear leaking through reassurance. Nyla noticed that restraint. It made her feel trusted. It also removed any excuse to stay. In that balance, something fragile formed. Support can feel like strength. It can also hide concern. Silas assumed that if love mattered, it would adapt naturally. Nyla assumed that if silence arrived later, it would mean understanding. Neither named these assumptions. Neither tried to secure the future with promises. They trusted maturity to handle what came next. That trust was genuine. It was also untested by distance. Distance would ask questions neither had prepared to answer. At first, distance felt manageable. Calls came in the evenings, unplanned but frequent. Messages filled gaps between busy hours. They shared updates the way they always had, calmly, without urgency. Silas adjusted his schedule to catch her after work. Nyla called when her days finally slowed. Neither complained about time zones. Neither treated effort as sacrifice. But routines shifted. Nyla's days grew fuller. New responsibilities demanded attention. Meetings replaced quiet evenings. Silas noticed the changes without resentment. Calls shortened. Replies came later. Some nights passed without connection at all. No argument followed. They both believed in space. They both believed maturity would carry them through. What they did not notice was how distance changes texture before it changes meaning. The conversations stayed polite. They also grew thinner. Neither wanted to be the one to ask if something was wrong. Neither wanted to name what felt different. So they allowed the shift to continue. Distance did not arrive as a break. It arrived as absence building slowly. A shared assumption settled between them. If something needed to be said, it would be said. That assumption would later prove costly. The news came quietly. No celebration. No moment that felt ready. Nyla learned on a morning shaped like any other. Early start. Short commute. A pause that lingered longer than expected. The result settled in her chest before her thoughts caught up. She sat still, letting the truth take form. A child, not planned, not timed, not discussed. Her first instinct was not fear of motherhood. It was concern for disruption. Silas lived a life built on steadiness, predictable days, careful routines. She imagined the weight of the news crossing distance, the shift it would demand, the way it might rewrite his future without consent. Nyla told herself she needed time. Time to think, time to understand what this meant, time to decide how to speak about it. She watched the phone without touching it. Silence felt like caution, like responsibility. She convinced herself waiting was thoughtful. That clarity would come with space, but time did not bring answers. It brought pressure. And with each passing day, the choice to speak felt heavier than the one to remain quiet. Fear rarely announces itself as fear. It arrives disguised as caution, as thoughtfulness, as restraint. Nyla told herself she was protecting Silas, protecting his routines, protecting his peace, protecting the life he had built before distance entered it. Each day she delayed the call, she created reasons that felt responsible. He deserved stability. He should not feel obligated. This choice was hers to carry. Logic bent under the weight of those thoughts. She imagined Silas hearing the news and feeling cornered. She imagined disappointment forming where support once lived. She imagined herself becoming an interruption instead of a partner. Fear shaped these visions until they felt real, and fear narrowed her options. Speaking meant changing everything. Silence meant keeping control. So she chose what felt manageable. She focused on work. She focused on preparation. She focused on getting through each day without breaking the rhythm she had created. The longer she waited, the harder it became to step out of the quiet she built. Fear does this. It convinces you that delay equals care, that endurance equals strength. By the time logic tried to return, silence had already taken its place. The decision did not arrive all at once. It formed through small choices repeated daily. Nyla stopped reaching for her phone. She told herself tomorrow would be better. Tomorrow would feel clearer. Tomorrow kept moving. Silence became easier than reopening a door that might not close the same way again. Each missed call reduced the urgency of the next. Each quiet day made the truth feel heavier. She framed the choice as independence, as strength, as taking responsibility alone. In reality, it was fear choosing comfort. She carried the truth without witnesses. She built a life around managing it. She prepared for motherhood without sharing the weight. Silas noticed the distance, but respected it. He assumed quiet meant space was needed. He believed support meant not pressing. Two people acted with care. Two people avoided harm as they understood it. And harm still grew. This is where the cost becomes clear. Silence meant to protect often wounds the deepest. Pause here and reflect. Has silence ever helped you? Or has it taken something you wish you had named sooner? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your experience may help someone else recognize theirs. Theo's early years unfolded in quiet spaces. Small apartments, secondhand furniture, corners made safe through care, not cost. He learned the world through Nyla's patience, through routines shaped to fit limited time and energy. Mornings began early. Nyla prepared him for daycare before sunrise, moving gently so he would not wake unsettled. She sang while dressing him, soft melodies without words. Theo grew used to consistency. Meals arrived on time. Bedtime followed the same pattern. Stories repeated until he could recite them himself. He learned trust through repetition. When he cried, Nyla responded. When he reached, she met him. Theo did not lack attention. He lacked excess. There were no grand outings, no crowded celebrations. What he had was presence. Nyla spoke to him like someone who mattered. She explained things even when he could not answer. She listened as if his sounds carried meaning. Theo grew observant, careful, secure in ways children often are when love stays steady. He did not know what was missing. He only knew what remained. That foundation would shape him later, long before he understood where it came from. Raising Theo alone demanded more than planning. It demanded endurance. Nyla balanced work and motherhood with precision, learned through necessity. Every hour carried purpose. Every expense required calculation. She accepted extra shifts when offered. She stretched resources without complaint. She learned which corners could bend and which could not. Sleep came in fragments. Rest arrived only when Theo slept deeply enough to release her attention. Nyla did not speak of difficulty often. She adjusted instead. She carried groceries and a child in the same trip. She answered emails with one hand while holding Theo steady with the other. She learned to move forward without waiting for ideal conditions. Some nights tested her resolve. Bills stacked. Energy faded. Questions arrived uninvited. Still, Nyla did not regret her choice. She believed responsibility meant accepting the weight of decisions fully. She believed Theo deserved calm, not explanation. When worry pressed in, she absorbed it quietly. She refused to let fear shape his days. Theo grew up watching effort, not sacrifice. He learned resilience by seeing it lived. Nyla's strength did not come from ease. It came from commitment. That commitment would later demand more than she realized. Nyla loved Theo with clarity, not the kind driven by fear, the kind built on intention. She watched him closely, not to control him, to understand him. She learned the sounds that meant hunger, frustration, curiosity. She adjusted her tone to calm him before distress took shape. She protected his space without isolating him from the world. Nyla believed love required preparation. She taught Theo how to wait his turn, how to use words instead of impulse, how to trust routine even when emotions shifted. Discipline never felt harsh. It felt steady. When Theo struggled, Nyla lowered herself to his level. She spoke clearly. She stayed until he settled. Her affection was constant. Her expectations were firm. She wanted Theo to grow secure, not dependent. Confident, not entitled. She kept reminders of progress. Drawings taped to walls. Notes tucked into drawers. Theo felt known. He did not question her presence. He relied on it. That love shaped his sense of safety. It also made her guard his future carefully. Every choice Nyla made carried one question. Will this protect him? That question would later guide her through a decision she never wanted to face. The changes arrived gradually. At first, Nyla dismissed them as fatigue, long days, interrupted sleep, the weight of responsibility catching up. She pushed through discomfort the way she always had. Adjusted schedules, skipped rest, promised herself recovery later. Later never came. Appointments replaced assumptions. Test results followed. Conversations grew careful. Nyla listened without panic. She asked direct questions. She planned. Energy became unpredictable. Some mornings felt manageable. Others required effort just to stand steady. Through it all, Theo remained her focus. She shielded him from concern, kept routines intact, maintained normalcy where she could. When weakness forced her to slow, she adapted again. Sitting instead of standing, resting between tasks, saving strength for what mattered most. Nyla did not speak of fear. She spoke of preparation. She organized documents, updated contacts, made quiet arrangements without explanation. She believed love required foresight. As her body asked more of her, clarity sharpened. Theo needed security that extended beyond her presence. That understanding settled heavily. It did not break her. It guided her. Nyla wrote the letter on a quiet evening. Theo slept nearby, breathing evenly, unaware of the weight pressing into the room. She did not rush the page. She did not soften the truth. She did not defend herself. Nyla believed explanations often shifted focus away from what mattered. So she chose simplicity. She included a photo first. Theo holding a small wooden truck. Eyes focused. Expression steady. Then the sentence. One line. Clear. Unprotected. He is yours. No justification followed. No apology trailed behind it. No request came after. Nyla trusted truth to speak for itself. She addressed the envelope with care, checked the details twice, set it aside until morning. This was not a plea. It was responsibility delivered. She understood what the letter would change. She also understood what silence could no longer preserve. Love sometimes prepares the future quietly, not through promises, not through presence that lasts forever, but through a decision made at the right moment, with clarity and without condition. When the letter left her hands, Nyla felt calm. She had done what love required. The letter arrived on a Tuesday, not marked urgent, no return address. Plain envelope, resting among bills and notices Silas sorted without thought. He opened it standing at the counter. Work boots still on. Jacket not yet hung. The paper inside felt heavier than expected. Silas noticed that first. Weight without explanation. He unfolded the page carefully, the way he handled things that mattered. The room stayed quiet around him. No music, no distractions. Before reading anything, he saw the photograph. His breath changed. Silas did not sit down. He did not lean for support. He stared. A small boy holding a wooden truck, dark curls falling forward, eyes focused in a way that felt familiar. The image pulled at memory without permission. Silas felt the distance between seconds stretch. His hands tightened slightly around the photo, not shaking, just still. He had repaired countless things in his life. He knew how to respond when something broke. This felt different. The letter had not explained itself yet. The truth had already arrived. Silas read the single line, and the room shifted. Silas studied the photo longer than he realized, not searching for answers, recognizing them. The boy's grip on the truck was careful, deliberate, not careless, not tight. A habit Silas had carried since childhood. The curve of the brow, the set of the mouth, the way the eyes held focus without strain. Details rose quietly. Not proof. Familiarity. Silas had spent years noticing what others overlooked. He trusted patterns. He trusted structure. This image unsettled both. The background of the photo told a story too. Simple furnishings, soft light, a space shaped for safety, not display. Silas imagined the moment it was taken. Someone crouched nearby, someone patient enough to wait for stillness. His chest tightened, not from pain, but from clarity arriving faster than his thoughts could organize. The photo did not accuse him. It did not demand response. It existed, and in existing, it connected time in ways Silas could not yet measure. He turned the photo over, a phone number written carefully along the edge. The truth had left him a door. Silas noticed his body before his thoughts. Breath shallow, shoulders tight, a weight pressing inward without pain. He placed the photo on the counter and rested his palms beside it, steadying himself the way he always did when something demanded focus. The room felt unchanged. Same walls, same light, yet time slowed. Silas had faced emergencies before. Storm damage, structural failure, moments that required calm. This was different. There was no task to complete, no sequence to follow. His heart beat louder than usual. Not fast, deliberate. Silas leaned back slightly, as if creating space between himself and the truth trying to settle. He did not pace. He did not speak. He stood. Silas had always believed control came from order, from knowing where to begin. Now, beginnings and endings overlapped. He picked up the photo again, careful, like it might change if handled roughly. The familiarity he felt refused to fade. This was not confusion. It was recognition without context. Silas closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, his hand moved toward the phone. Silas dialed the number without sitting down. He did not rehearse words. He did not prepare questions. The line rang longer than he expected. Once, twice, he considered hanging up, not from doubt, from respect for what the call would change. Then, the line connected. Nyla's voice came through softer than he remembered. Steady, but thinner. She said his name once. Silas did not respond immediately. He listened to her breathing, measured, controlled. There was no greeting, no attempt to ease into the conversation. Silas asked one question. Is he mine? The pause that followed felt intentional, not hesitation, acknowledgement. Yes, Nyla said. The words settled without resistance. Silas did not raise his voice. He did not ask how or why. He closed his eyes and let the truth stand on its own. Nyla continued, explaining what distance had delayed. The move, the timing, the choice to stay quiet. Silas listened the way he always had, fully, without interruption. The call did not carry anger. It carried consequence. Nyla spoke without shielding herself. She did not begin with excuses. She did not ask for forgiveness. She told the story straight. She explained the move, the weeks that followed, the moment she realized she was pregnant. Her voice stayed even, though effort lived beneath it. She spoke about fear, not as weakness, but as influence. Fear of altering Silas's life without agreement. Fear of becoming a weight instead of a partner. She admitted choosing silence because it felt manageable, because it allowed control when uncertainty felt overwhelming. Nyla did not say she was right. She said she was afraid. She described raising Theo alone, the routines, the planning, the love. She spoke of his curiosity, his calm nature, his questions about how things worked. Silas listened to every word. He did not interrupt to correct details. He did not demand justification. The confession was not meant to persuade him. It was meant to place truth where it belonged. When Nyla finished, she did not ask what he would do. She waited. The silence, after the call, lasted longer than the conversation. Silas did not hang up right away. Neither did Nyla. The line stayed open, carrying breath and nothing else. No anger filled the space. No comfort rushed in to replace it. Just truth resting where it had finally been placed. When the call ended, Silas remained standing at the counter, the photo still in front of him, the letter folded beside it. He did not move to fix anything. He did not reach for distraction. Silence demanded acknowledgement. This kind of truth did not ask permission. It asked for courage. Silas understood something clearly then. Time does not soften responsibility. It sharpens it. Truth delayed still requires action, still demands presence, still claims space. Silas picked up the photo one last time and looked at the child who had lived without him. There was no question of whether he would respond, only how. That decision formed without noise, and from that quiet moment, everything else would follow. Silas arrived early, not because he was eager, because waiting felt dishonest. The meeting took place in a quiet office, arranged to feel neutral. Small table, low chairs, a shelf with toys placed carefully, as if comfort could be planned. Silas stood when the door opened. Theo entered holding the social worker's hand. Steps cautious, eyes alert. He did not rush forward. He did not hide. Theo studied the room the way children do when they are deciding whether it is safe. Silas lowered himself slowly, matching Theo's height without invitation. He did not reach out. He did not speak first. He waited. The silence felt different than before. Not empty. Observant. Theo glanced at Silas, then away. Then back again. Silas felt grief rise and held it back. This moment was not for him. He introduced himself simply. "My name is Silas." Nothing more followed. Theo nodded once. It was enough. No explanations were needed yet. No history had to be unpacked. This was not about catching up. It was about beginning. Theo did not move closer. He stayed near the social worker, one hand gripping the edge of her sleeve. Not tightly. Just enough to remind himself she was there. His eyes stayed on Silas, measuring. Children who have lived through change learn to read rooms quickly. Theo had learned this skill early. He watched Silas's hands. Empty. Still. He listened to his voice. Even. Unforced. Theo shifted his weight from one foot to the other, unsure which direction felt safer. Forward meant unknown. Staying meant delay. Silas recognized the pause. He had repaired many things in his life, but trust was not one of them. Trust could not be adjusted or tested. It had to be allowed. So Silas stayed where he was. He did not fill the space with reassurance. He did not promise anything. He let Theo control the distance. Theo glanced toward the toys, then back at Silas. He took one step forward, then stopped. Silas remained still. That restraint mattered. It told Theo something words could not. Nothing would be taken from him here. Nothing would be rushed. Theo's attention drifted back to the shelf. A small wooden truck rested near the edge. Worn smooth. Familiar. He reached for it without asking. The truck rolled once across the table and stopped near Silas's hand. Theo watched the space between them. Silas did not move. He kept his palm open, resting flat, giving Theo room to decide. The pause stretched. Then Theo placed the truck closer, not offering it. Testing distance. Silas met the moment with stillness. Theo stepped forward, slow and careful, eyes locked on Silas's hand. He lowered his own beside it. Small fingers touched skin. Theo did not pull away. Silas felt the contact settle through him, not as shock, as recognition. He closed his hand gently around Theo's. No pressure, no claim, just presence. Theo's shoulders eased. The room exhaled. Nothing else happened. No smiles, no tears. But something changed. Connection did not arrive with words. It arrived with consent. If this moment reaches you, like and share this story. Quiet choices deserve to be seen. Grief arrived after the meeting, not during it. Silas felt it when he stepped outside and closed the door behind him. When the quiet returned without Theo in front of him, he let the feeling surface. Then he set it aside. This was not a moment for regret. It was a moment for direction. Silas understood something clearly. He could mourn the years he missed. Or he could protect the years ahead. He chose the second. That choice showed up immediately. He rearranged his schedule without announcing it. Cleared mornings, left evenings open. He prepared his home with care, not decorations. Function, a small bed, night lights placed low, routines planned before questions could form. Silas did not wait for certainty to act. He learned Theo's needs by observing. He listened more than he spoke. He let consistency do the work grief could not. Pain did not disappear. It moved aside. Action gave it somewhere to go. Silas Reed did not step forward because he felt ready. He stepped forward because responsibility does not wait for comfort. That decision marked the shift. From loss to presence, from silence to staying. Night arrived differently for Theo. Days moved forward with structure. Evenings brought questions he could not explain. The first night he slept in Silas's home, Theo stayed awake longer than expected. Eyes open, body still. Silas noticed without comment. He sat nearby, reading quietly, keeping the room steady. No bright lights, no rushing toward sleep. Theo shifted often. Small movements, careful breaths. When the fear surfaced, it came without sound. Theo stood beside Silas's chair, holding the edge of his sleeve. Not crying, waiting. Silas closed the book and knelt. He did not ask what was wrong. He understood fear did not always need words. Silas walked Theo back to bed and stayed seated until his breathing slowed. Some nights required silence. Other nights required presence that did not fade. The routine repeated. Fear arrived less often when consistency met it the same way each time. Silas learned this quickly. Night fears did not disappear through reassurance. They eased through reliability. Theo learned that when the dark brought uncertainty, someone stayed. That knowledge settled deeper than sleep. Silas changed his days before anyone asked him to. Morning meetings moved later. Evening work shifted earlier. Weekends cleared. He did not explain these choices. He made them. Theo's routine came first. Breakfast happened at the same time every day. Shoes lined up by the door. Backpacks checked twice. Silas learned which mornings required quiet and which welcomed conversation. He learned when to offer help and when to allow independence. He built time around Theo's needs without turning it into sacrifice. Consistency replaced urgency. Silas left work on schedule, even when tasks remained. He trusted that responsibility did not always mean staying longer. Sometimes it meant leaving on time. Theo noticed. Children read patterns faster than words. When Silas arrived home as promised, trust grew. When plans stayed intact, safety followed. No speeches explained the changes. They showed themselves through repetition. Silas adjusted without resentment. He did not frame the shift as loss. This was not a temporary arrangement. This was a life being shaped. Schedule changes became the language of commitment. And through that language, Theo learned where he belonged. Therapy entered their lives quietly, not as a crisis response. As support, Silas chose it carefully, listening more than researching. He wanted someone who understood children shaped by change, not labels. That was how they met Alara Finch. She spoke softly, asked questions that waited for answers, observed before suggesting. Alara never rushed Theo. She let him move at his pace. She paid attention to how he responded to consistency, not pressure. She noticed how Theo listened for Silas's voice in the waiting room, how his shoulders eased when Silas arrived on time. Alara respected that bond. She never positioned herself as replacement, never asked Theo to name feelings before he was ready. With Silas, she spoke plainly. She explained that healing followed routine, that patience mattered more than progress. Silas trusted her approach. Sessions became part of the week, not a disruption, a rhythm. Through therapy, Theo gained language for feelings he had managed alone. Silas learned how to listen without fixing. Alara remained steady. She honored Nyla's place without hesitation. That respect shaped trust. Healing did not arrive quickly. It arrived honestly. Growth did not announce itself. It appeared in small shifts. Theo slept through more nights. Questions replaced fear. Laughter returned without hesitation. Silas noticed changes, but did not rush to name them. He allowed space for progress to settle. Emotional growth required patience. Silas learned to sit with feelings instead of resolving them. He learned when silence supported more than explanation. He learned that reassurance worked best when it arrived consistently, not urgently. Theo learned to express needs without retreating, to trust that responses would come, to expect presence without testing it. Alara observed this evolution quietly. She acknowledged progress without turning it into performance. She reminded Silas that healing did not move backward when days felt heavy. Nyla's memory remained part of their lives, not spoken of often, not avoided. She existed as truth, not comparison. This mattered. Healing grew because no one tried to erase the past. They allowed it to remain without defining the future. Through routine, patience shaped stability, and stability allowed love to deepen without force. Healing does not demand speed. It grows when someone stays long enough for trust to catch up. Silas did not seek closeness. It found its way in through familiarity. Alara remained part of their routine long after therapy became stable, not by extending sessions, by existing consistently. They spoke briefly at first. Updates about Theo, observations shared without judgment. Conversations never drifted toward personal ground, unless invited. Alara noticed Silas's restraint, how he measured words, how he waited before responding. She respected it. Their connection formed in pauses rather than gestures, a shared understanding about patience, a mutual awareness of boundaries. Alara never compared herself to Nyla. She did not ask Silas to explain the past. She accepted that some stories belonged where they began. They walked together after sessions occasionally. Short distances, unplanned. Silas felt no pressure to define what this was becoming. Alara offered no urgency. Trust built through what was not demanded. This mattered to Silas. Love had once grown quietly for him. He recognized the pattern. This time, he moved with awareness. He did not confuse comfort with readiness. He allowed connection to unfold, without asking it to carry more than it could. Commitment did not arrive through declaration. It approached through patience. Silas did not treat the decision as symbolic. It was practical, deliberate. He reviewed requirements carefully, read every document twice, asked questions he did not rush. This was not about recognition. It was about permanence. Theo had already settled into the home. Routines held. Trust grew without hesitation. Silas understood something important. Being present was not enough. Security needed form. He filed the paperwork without announcement. No speeches. No emotional framing. Theo did not need a moment's stage for reassurance. He needed structure that stayed. Silas explained the process in simple terms. He did not promise timelines. He did not soften uncertainty. Theo listened quietly. He asked one question. "Does this mean I stay?" Silas answered without pause. Yes. That answer carried weight because it matched every day before it. Filing the adoption did not change how Silas acted. It aligned the law with reality. Responsibility had already been chosen. This step only made it undeniable. The process moved slower than Silas expected. Paperwork returned with notes. Appointments shifted. Dates moved without explanation. Weeks stretched. Silas did not react with frustration. He adjusted. He gathered documents again, resubmitted forms, waited without complaint. Theo noticed the delays before he understood them. Questions came quietly, not often, carefully. Silas answered honestly. He explained that systems took time, that adults sometimes waited too. That waiting did not mean uncertainty. He showed this through behavior. Nothing changed at home. Schedules stayed steady. Plans remained intact. Silas did not let the process interrupt life. Court delays tested patience. They also revealed it. Alara observed this without comment. She saw how Silas refused to let uncertainty shape his presence. He did not rush the outcome. He trusted consistency to carry them through. Waiting did not weaken commitment. It clarified it. Silas understood that responsibility did not depend on timelines. It depended on choice repeated daily. And that choice never wavered. Resolve revealed itself in repetition. Silas never spoke about commitment as sacrifice. He lived it as consistency. Each delayed hearing, each request for additional review, each pause that tested patience, none of it changed his direction. He attended every meeting prepared, arrived early, waited calmly. At home, life continued uninterrupted. Theo grew more secure with each passing week. Trust deepened without needing reassurance. Alara noticed the steadiness, not as endurance, as choice. Silas did not compartmentalize love. He expanded it responsibly. His connection with Alara remained patient, never competing with his role as a father, never asking him to divide attention. She understood that love built on convenience fades quickly. Love built on responsibility holds. Silas chose commitment twice without hesitation. First, through daily presence. Second, through legal permanence. Neither choice required comfort. Both required intention. This was the lesson carried forward. Love does not deepen through ease. It deepens through responsibility honored consistently. The courtroom felt smaller than Silas expected. Not crowded. Contained. Wooden benches lined the room with quiet symmetry. Light filtered through high windows without drawing attention to itself. Theo sat beside Silas, legs swinging slightly above the floor. He wore the same jacket he insisted on bringing for important days. Not new, familiar. Silas placed his hand flat on his knee, close enough for Theo to notice without reaching. The judge entered without ceremony. No dramatic pause followed. No emphasis placed on the moment. That suited Silas. This room was not meant for display. It was meant for decisions that stayed. As the clerk reviewed the case, Silas listened without shifting. He had memorized the details already. Dates, forms, reviews. Theo watched the judge closely, reading tone more than words. Silas leaned slightly toward him. "This part takes time," he said quietly. Theo nodded, trusting the explanation without question. The judge addressed Silas directly. Her voice carried clarity, not weight. She asked about stability, about routine, about intention. Silas answered each question plainly. No speech followed. No attempt to impress. He spoke the way he lived. Direct. Prepared. When the judge turned her attention to Theo, she smiled gently, not to reassure him, to acknowledge him. Theo met her gaze, steady and alert. This was not a moment of performance. It was a moment of recognition. The room held its breath without realizing it. The judge reviewed the file once more, not because she doubted it, because this was how she treated decisions that altered lives. She looked up at Silas again. "Mr. Reed," she said, steady and unhurried. "This court has reviewed your application, your home assessment, and the recommendations provided." Silas remained still. He did not brace himself. He did not search Theo's face. He trusted the process because he had honored it. The judge spoke about responsibility, about permanence, about the meaning of choosing a child every day, not only in moments of ease. Her words were measured, careful. She did not praise Silas. She did not frame him as exceptional. She acknowledged commitment. Then she reached the decision. This adoption is approved. The sentence did not echo. It did not land with weight. It settled. Theo did not react immediately. He looked to Silas, waiting for confirmation the way he always did. Silas turned toward him and nodded once. "Yes," he said quietly. Theo exhaled, shoulders easing without realizing they had been tight. The judge continued speaking, outlining the formalities that followed approval. Silas listened, absorbing instructions without interruption. This was not a victory he needed announced. It was an alignment between truth and law. Theo leaned slightly closer to Silas, not seeking reassurance, simply adjusting position. Silas placed his hand over Theo's. No squeezing. No display. Just acknowledgement. The court clerk noted the ruling. Paperwork shifted from pending to complete. Nothing dramatic marked the transition. That was the point. Some moments change everything, without asking for attention. The clerk read the final details aloud. Dates, signatures, records that would now match reality. Then came the name. "The child formerly known as Theo Brooks," the clerk said, pausing only briefly, "will be legally recognized as Theo Reed." Theo did not respond right away. Names carry weight children feel before they understand. He looked down at his hands, turning them over slowly, as if checking something still fit. Silas watched him carefully. He did not rush to explain. He did not celebrate. He waited. Theo lifted his head. "So I have your name now," he said, more statement than question. Silas answered with the same steadiness he had used since the beginning. "Yes." Theo nodded once. No smile spread across his face. No sudden excitement followed. Instead, something quieter happened. Theo sat straighter, not taller, more certain. The name did not replace anything. It added something. Nyla's care remained part of him. Her love had shaped his beginning. This name shaped his future. Silas understood the balance. He had not erased a story. He had continued one. The judge acknowledged the change with a simple nod, treating it with the seriousness it deserved. No applause followed. No one stood. Theo reached for Silas's sleeve and held it lightly. Not to confirm presence, to mark belonging. Silas placed his hand over Theo's, letting the moment settle without instruction. A name had changed. Security had not. The difference mattered. This was not about ownership. It was about continuity. Theo Reed was not becoming someone else. He was being recognized fully. They left the courtroom the same way they entered it. Calm. Unhurried. No one clapped. No one spoke louder than necessary. Silas thanked the clerk, nodded to the judge, gathered the documents, and placed them carefully in a folder he had prepared weeks earlier. Theo walked beside him, not holding his hand this time. Close enough to brush sleeves. Outside, the day continued as usual. Cars passed. People moved through their routines. Nothing announced what had changed. Silas did not suggest a celebration. He did not frame the moment as something fragile that needed protecting. They stopped for lunch at a small place Theo liked. Ordered the same meals they always did. Theo ate quietly, then looked up. "So this means, I go home with you," he said. Silas answered without ceremony. Yes, that was all. No speeches followed. No promises were stacked on the moment. Theo finished his meal and asked about homework, about what time they would leave, about whether the dog next door would still bark at night. Life resumed its rhythm. That was the victory. Silas understood something clearly then. Moments that change lives do not always arrive with noise. They often settle quietly into routine, waiting to be lived out. Theo leaned back in his chair, comfortable, certain. Silas watched him, not with relief, but with resolve. The work did not end here. It continued. Every morning, every night, some victories whisper. They do not need witnesses. They prove themselves through what follows. Bedtime settled into the house without effort, not as an event, as a habit. Theo brushed his teeth while Silas cleared the kitchen. The lights dimmed the same way every night. Doors checked, curtains drawn. Silas followed Theo down the hallway and paused at the doorway, letting him climb into bed on his own. Independence mattered now. The room carried familiar sounds, the hum of the heater, the faint noise of traffic outside. Silas sat on the edge of the bed, resting his hands on his knees. "Do you want the light lower?" he asked. Theo nodded. Silas adjusted it without comment. They talked about small things, school plans, a question Theo had about numbers, whether tomorrow would be a packed lunch or a warm one. No heavy subjects appeared. Silas understood that safety lived in predictability. When the conversation slowed, Silas remained seated, not because Theo asked him to stay, because this was part of the routine. Theo turned slightly, facing him. Silas waited. Children speak when they are ready, not when prompted. The silence stretched comfortably. Theo's voice came quietly, not uncertain, not afraid, just thoughtful. This was the kind of moment Silas had learned not to interrupt. It did not need guiding. It needed space. Theo did not look at Silas when he spoke. His eyes stayed on the ceiling, tracing shapes only he could see. "You stayed," he said. Not a question, a conclusion. Silas felt the words settle before he answered. They carried more than gratitude, more than relief. They carried memory. Theo had learned what leaving felt like before he learned how to explain it. He had learned absence through patterns breaking, through routines shifting without warning. Staying to him was not automatic. It was noticed. Silas did not respond immediately. He did not want to rush the moment by filling it with reassurance. Theo continued. "You come back every day," he said. "You don't forget." Silas swallowed once, quietly. "Yes," he said. "I do." Theo turned his head then, finally meeting Silas's eyes, not searching for proof, confirming it. The room stayed still around them. This was not a moment shaped by court decisions or paperwork. This was the moment that mattered. Silas understood that staying was something proven repeatedly, not promised once. Theo's trust had not come from the adoption. It had come from mornings that arrived as expected, from evenings that ended the same way. Silas reached out and rested his hand on the edge of the bed. Not holding, not guiding, just present. Theo shifted close. Not holding, not guiding, just present. Theo shifted closer without asking. "You always stay," he said again, softer this time. Silas nodded. This was not something to argue with. It was something to live up to. Silas did not offer a speech. He understood that children listen for truth in tone, not length. "I will," he said. 2 words. Unadorned. Certain. Theo watched his face, not the words. Silas stayed where he was, letting the meaning settle without pushing it forward. "I'm here," Silas added. "Every day." Theo nodded slowly. That was enough. Silas did not promise perfection. He did not explain plans for years ahead. He had learned that security came from what repeated, not what was declared. Theo turned onto his side, facing the wall, not retreating, resting. Silas waited until Theo's breathing found a steady rhythm. He adjusted the blanket slightly, careful not to wake him, turned the light lower. Before leaving the room, Silas paused. He looked at the child who had learned safety through consistency rather than words. Silas understood something clearly. Staying did not mean never failing. It meant returning. It meant choosing presence again after fatigue, after mistakes, after long days. Silas had built his life around effort that did not need praise. That belief had not changed. What had changed was where that effort belonged. He closed the door quietly behind him. The house settled. Silas carried the words with him as he moved through the hallway. I will. It was not reassurance offered once. It was a commitment renewed daily. Alara waited in the living room, not standing, not watching the hallway. She sat with a book open on her lap, one finger marking the page, listening without intruding. Silas noticed her presence the way he noticed steady things. Without surprise, she looked up when he entered, reading his expression before asking anything. How did it go? She said. Silas nodded once. Good. Alara did not ask for details. She understood that some moments belonged to silence first. She closed the book and set it aside, shifted slightly to make space beside her without inviting him directly. Silas sat. They stayed quiet. Alara respected the balance they had built together. She never positioned herself between Silas and Theo, never framed her presence as addition or replacement. She understood that love did not compete. It accompanied. Alara had never asked Silas to speak less of the past. She had never rushed him toward a future. She stayed present without pressing. That restraint made her part of the family without announcement. Silas reached for her hand, resting his fingers lightly against hers. She met the gesture without tightening her grip. No promises passed between them. No plans needed to be named. They shared understanding through posture, through stillness. Ilara's presence did not demand attention. It offered support. This mattered. Theo had learned safety through consistency. Alara honored that by remaining steady herself. Love grew where patience lived. Silas stood at the window later that night. The street outside looked the same as it always had. Lights passing. Houses settled into rest. Nothing marked the change that had taken place. That was fitting. This story was never about shock. It was about responsibility carried quietly. Silas did not become a father through paperwork. He became one through mornings kept on schedule, through nights answered without hesitation, through returning when it would have been easier not to. Love proved itself here without noise, not through speeches, not through promises meant to impress, through staying. Theo would not remember every word spoken in this house. He would remember patterns. Who arrived, who returned. Alara remained seated nearby, her presence steady, unclaimed. She understood that love rooted in patience lasts longer than love built on urgency. This is the lesson worth carrying forward. Love does not demand attention. It earns trust. If this story stayed with you, take a moment to subscribe. These are the stories that remind us what responsibility looks like when no one is watching. Share your takeaway in the comments. Tell us where consistency changed your life. And if you know someone who believes quiet love still matters, share this story with them. Because the victories that last rarely announce themselves. They show up. They remain. They stay.